welcome to another edition of Adventures in Producing. Our adventurous producer today is Andrea Cornwell. She is a British producer. You might know her from some amazing films like Dan Kokotajlo's Apostasy. I always say his name wrong. Apologies to
No, that's
Dan.
good. Yeah.
Okay. Ruari Robinson's Last Days on Mars, Saul Dibb's Sweet Francaise, the documentary Seahorse by Jeanie Finlay, and Bruce Lee and the Outlaw by Joost Vandebrug. And she's really white hot right now because she is the producer of Rose Glass's wildly acclaimed Saint Maud.
Yeah.
Yes. So welcome, Andrea. Thank you for telling us a little bit about your producing career. First of all, did you always know that you might want to be a producer rather than working in some other aspect of the film business?
Oh, no, I mean, I didn't know I wanted to be in the film business at all. And I mean, I come from a family which has no sort of professional arts associations at all. My father was a big fan of the theatre. And so I definitely saw a lot of opera and a lot of theatre when I was growing up, but nobody worked in anything like it. And I studied archaeology. So that was what I was absolutely, I was going to go and dig things up. And I've got sort of slightly weird theories about how they're similar, film and archaeology.
But, okay, tell us one of those theories. You're unearthing something.
I just think there's a sort of romance to both of them. You know, there's a sort of slightly hippie idea about story. I think, you know, when you're an archaeologist, it is all about finding these tiny glimpses of people's lives in a very empathetic sense. And people always think about archaeology as kind of digging for treasure. And certainly most archaeologists I ever met, you know, you don't find the kind of, you know, you don't dig down 6 foot and find a sword, you know, but you might find a horse's footprint or something that people cook their dinner in, or a fence post, and you know that's where they kept their sheep in, or, you know. So it's these very, very small moments that just give you insight what it's like to be someone else. And you know, that is literally what we do all day long in film, is try and kind of create these moments and these little gestures and props that kind of create an entire world. And you know, most of what you do in archaeology is absolute fiction. You know, you're creating a story about who their family was, or how they lived, or how they traded. And so yeah, I've met a few ex-archaeologists in the business. We have a little moment.
Interesting. So you've got your archaeology degree. How do you then move into film at all?
It was through theatre. So I produced theatre as a student, and then sort of thought, well, hell, I'll just take a year out and go and live in London and not go and do more archaeology related stuff. And ended up producing on the Fringe, and just to earn a bit of money, I ended up working in the West End. I was on Starlight Express for 18 months, which was an absolute hoot. And so I was kind of in that world and sort of toying with being a professional producer in theatre, but that is a different job. And I did quite a bit of new writing in theatre, but actually, you know, there is the kind of the world of the rehearsal room, which is very much this sort of private, sacred chamber that only the director and the actors go into, and and the writer. And I don't know, the process was not one that I felt so much engagement with. And then through a play that I was doing, I met one of the cast, had a partner who was a production manager or a line producer in film, and said, did I want to come and work on this as a crew member, which was can I say it's a terrible film? No, it was it was a British gangster movie, and it wasn't
not
great.
Really your milieu.
No, but I mean, you know, but I didn't care, you know. I was sort of, and it was mayhem and low budget, and we were there doing masses of overtime every day, and as me thinking, oh, this is brilliant, you know, I've got nowhere else to go. so yeah, that was it really, and I didn't look back. And so I came up very much through the floor and through production. So I was a location manager on a couple of films. I was a production coordinator, then a manager, then a line producer on a few things. And so yeah, I had a very sort of solid grounding in physical production, sort of ducking around various departments.
And how do you think, I mean, I think you know, if I could do my career over, maybe I'd study to be a line producer. First of all, they're so in demand right now.
Yeah.
But I think it gives you such a good understanding of how a physical production works and how to keep it running. I mean, how do you think coming up through physical production, and especially something like line producing, has helped you when you're having the more creative producing, lead producing?
Oh, matters. And I think, you know, I mean, everyone does every job differently, you know, so you know, the way that one line producer might choose to run a show is you know, they're, you know, not always the same, but certainly I always found, you know, I was always surprised, because, you know, people think line producing, you're just looking after the money and the budget, and you're, you know, it's you know, you're sort of responsible for bringing the ship in intact and on time, on budget, but you know, you are constantly making decisions about things that are deeply creative, because at a certain point, you know, you always reach a point where you've got the kind of basics of the production is set. So, you know, the kind of scale of it, the kind of crew, the kind of experience level, what you're paying for. And then it really is like, do you want to have 4 sheep, or do you want to have a ladder pod, or do you want to have, you know, 10 more extras, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, and these things are all sort of value judgment, and that there is always a bit that every line producer kind of goes, I don't think you need 4 more sheep, so I'm going to quietly lose those, and I think you do need 10 more extras. So, you know, so that you know, that but it does really make you think about what's important. And on every single job I've ever done, there's always a moment where the director, who's absolutely kind of in the front line of it all, is kind of going, I cannot live unless that wall is brown, you know, like, and then, you know, we've all been in the edit when it's things that were sort of seemingly a problem are just an asset, you know, you get the sort of creative value out of restriction sometimes. So I think having the confidence to kind of know what you're on about on that front, it really helps, definitely. And I'm always slightly amazed that producers who've just come straight out of a development baground, I mean, I just think the whole thing must be absolutely terrifying, the idea of being on a film set and just thinking, who are all these people and what do they all do? I don't, you know, there's hundreds of them, you know, what are they all doing?
Yeah, film sets can be intimidating places, especially if you don't know where you fit in, or what everybody's doing there.
I mean, I love it. I just, you know, for me, it's like running off and joining the circus. It's, you know, I you know, just trotting around unit bases. I always realise I'm sort of deeply happy just trotting around Winnebagos. But it's yeah, I think you do need to kind of know how it all fits together. And I did quite a lot of international production when I was kind of coming up, and in, you know, line producing. So I've worked in, you know, Tunisia and Morocco and Jordan, quite a lot around the Middle East, and bits in Africa, and shot in India, and, you know, so you know, as well as Mexico, you know, so quite far flung places. And you start, you know, I mean, the basics are the same world over. And I mean, hilariously, the kind of, you know, a grip is a grip, whether you're in Mexico or India, you know, you sort of meet the same personality types over and over again. But yeah, there is differences. And like, you know, in India, I mean, I've just shot something there last year, and, you know, your crew is double the size that you would get. I mean, literally double. And to the point where you think if that was in Britain, they would all be falling over each other and it will be mayhem. And yet there's a sort of ballet about how they're all used to kind of working in that way. So yeah, I just think it all ends up on screen. You know, there is a sort of bit about that alchemy of the set that comes out somehow.
Yeah, I was going to ask you this later, but you brought it up about your international experience. You know, you are based in London. You produce a lot. Your base is in the UK. Not that you can't work internationally. What do you like about working in the UK? And then what would you say are sort of the frustrations or the challenges of working in the UK?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a British filmmaker, so yes, I definitely love working in the UK, and it's, you know, naturally you generate more stories than not that are set here. So you know, it is something that is my sort of, you know, I've done that more than anything else. And the crews here are brilliant, and, you know, obviously we have got this full spectrum of big studio pictures, the sort of Marvel level of massive production that goes on, all the way down to the kind of absolutely micro budgety stuff. And I think one of my big sort of surprises and frustrations is a little bit how little those layers mix. And I certainly found it when I was sort of working, that I started in this sort of more guerrilla end, low budget, and you do get sort of trapped in that, and even now, this is 20 years later, you still find that people that work in the sort of low budget indie space are the kind of repeat offenders. And then and the ones that work in, and they come in and work on the kind of big US shows or whatever else, they stay there. So I've often thought that you'll be quite healthy if people mixed up more. I mean, there's obvious barriers to that, like fees and salaries, and it's very hard to go backwards once you've been used to a certain resource, and you have gotten, it's difficult. But I think there is a sort of thing in the UK where, and it's now changed again because we've got all the streamer money come in, and this has been this massive. I mean, I'm on a big series at the moment, working with Clio Barnard and the Essex Serpent, and that's a brilliant adaptation of a book set in 1893, full of ideas about the change and the cusp of modernism, but it's something that it would have been done at a very different scale 5 years ago if it was a sort of public television kind of adaptation. So it does make you blink a bit.
Is that with a streamer? Sorry, I don't know.
Yes, it's with Apple. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's your first time in episodic of this scale, or?
Yeah. I've done bits of TV before, but and singles, but I worked a little bit in television as a line producer years ago, but yeah, no, it's the first time I've worked with a kind of streamer, and yes, and seen that kind of the new world of high-end television.
Yeah. How are you finding that? I mean, it's logistically it's a bit different, or are you enjoying it? Yeah,
I am enjoying it. It's I mean, I've always sort of pinged between budget levels, so a bit. I mean, I've never done the kind of the big US studio end of things. That's not my world. But Sweet Francaise was a sort of bigger film with a US cast in it, and and then straight after that, I did Apostasy, which was not quite micro budget, but more or less, sort of very, very contained, tiny crew working in Manchester. And, I'm very happy swinging about. It's sort of, I go where the work sort of speaks to me, but yeah, this is something else again. So it is a different scale, and we're sort of running it like a film. So in a weird way, I think I've not shifted so far from my comfort zone as I might have, because we're treating it like a giant film. So we've got Clio Barnard directing the whole thing. 6 episodes. We're running it as a single team. We're scheduling it like you would on a film. So it just feels like a giant never-ending
a long film
shoot.
But presumably you get a sort of green light with Apple, and that means you don't have to patchwork together 12 co-producers and that kind of thing.
Sure. I mean, I'm working with Seesaw on this one, so this is something they're doing, but it's absolutely you don't. I mean, but I mean that's true on some films as well. I mean, even at the smaller, I mean, even St. Maud, it was only 2 financiers. It was Film 4 and BFI, who are such regular partners that actually, it's almost seamless. The connection between them, and on that one, it was a very happy creative experience as well. So they were both very much aligned in terms of their notes and feedback at every step of the way. So it doesn't always have to be that film is this kind of absolute ball ache of a built, like where you're just tugging in every direction. I mean, I've certainly been there as well, but
Well, I was curious about Sweet Francaise, not that you've implied that that was a ball ache, but that was a bigger production. There's probably lots of partners on that. Certainly at the time, that was the biggest thing that you had worked on. And that wasn't shot that was shot in Belgium, or was it? A
tiny bit in France, but mostly in Belgium.
I mean, what did you personally learn from working on a project like that?
Oh, masses. I mean, it was I was working with Michael Kuhn at QWERTY Films at the time, so we'd just done the Mars movie together. So and I mean, Michael, he's a legend in the industry, and used to run Polygram, and so, but he takes the kind of bird's eye view on things. So he likes working with producers who are much more in the trenches. So that was me on that film. But yeah, I mean, it was Harvey, so it was the Weinstein Company, so that was something. First time seeing that in close up.
I mean, are you comfortable saying what the working process was like with him? Was he living up to the Scissorhands reputation?
I mean, we didn't see the other side of it. I mean, I certainly didn't, although we all knew about it. It was, I'm astonished to hear people who've been in the industry for any length of time who kind of went, "Oh, I never knew." It's just like, well, everybody knew it was, but it which is appalling, and on all of us at some level. But no, the other side, the bullying and the kind of editorial heavy-handedness and all of that. Yes, no, it's because everybody has heard the stories, and you normally sort of, with those stories, because you hear them about other people, and you take a bit of a pinch of salt, and you kind of go, well, there's probably some truth in it, but actually, it's probably exaggerated, or it's just on that one, or there's a personality clash or something, and then you sort of you see it and you kind of, oh, okay, it's real and more. So it was, I mean, in the whole, it just made everything more complicated. I mean, I can't go into it in too much detail, but it was a strong flavor throughout. Definitely, it was definitely part of the job, was just coping with that level of kind of interference. Yes.
Yeah, bullying and interference. I would say. From what I knew of him.
No, so that was definitely a big step up. I was pregnant at the time, so found out I was pregnant on first week of the shoot, I think, from memory. So which in a way was quite
production
good.
Are you prouder of? You have to say the show.
Well, I have to say the little one being homeschooled downstairs, but it's of course, but it was it was wild. Yeah, she was born in the edit, and I had 2 weeks
not
off.
literally in the edit room, we hope.
Thankfully not literally in the edit room. No, that would have been something else. But but I took 2 weeks off, and then she came to work with me. So so she was in the little backpack, or little noose thing, and off she came, and got passed around the sound department, and sat in the test screenings.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, I mean, and if and when I do interview male producers and they bring up their kids, I'm going to ask them about parenting as well. So this is not just because you're a mom.
Yeah.
But how have you found it juggling producing with having family? Because producing is not a 9-to-5 job. There's fallow periods, there's stressful periods, there's weeks you're away from home. How did you manage all that?
Well, I mean, everyone does it differently. I mean, I've just got one, which undoubtedly helps a bit, but it's. I mean, I guess that it would apply to other jobs as well. It's all about, and it would apply to men in some instances as well. But you do make certain choices, I found, as a result. So the fact that I did Apostasy and did some work with Grain and did the documentary features, what was a direct response to having a young child and feeling like, I mean, my taste tends more to the art house side anyway, so I was excited to do that work creatively, but equally I did not want to be in Belgium for 18 weeks or whatever it was, so just and trying to manage that it's one thing with a baby, you can carry them around with you, but as soon as they're running around for game over. So no, I've definitely made certain choices because of trying to make that life work balance work. And I've not done I've done fiction shoots. I've done Apostasy and St. Maud since having her, and now this, and actually no, I did a shoot in India as well, but that we did in a couple of blocks, so that I was only away forever, 3-4 weeks at a time. This is the biggest shoot I've done since being a parent, but it's London based. I'm London based in the main, so it feels manageable.
So what does your daughter think about you being a producer?
She's just beginning to find it exciting, and she's a big fan of watching films, and so the idea that even though I sort of work hard, that this is something that she's beginning to get interested in. But I just did she came on set for St. Maud and saw Rose Glass directing, and she was around very much when I was making Seahorse with Jeanie Finlay directing, and now with Clio Barnard directing Essex Serpent. So I've worked an awful lot with female directors recently. So she did turn to me and say, "Mummy, can boys be directors?" And it's brilliant. It's just I do think that's the next generation kind of attitude. It's not kind of, is this something I could do, but it's clearly that's what women do. They're directors, so
I love it.
It's great seeing this kind of sea change happen, and it goes to show it is all about role models and just an expectation, and this is across the industry. We're having these big debates about, well, long overdue, about diversity in all forms, and I'm a massive believer that you do have to build these role models, and it just becomes so quickly normalized.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wanted to ask about some of these directors you've worked with, not just the women, but let's talk about Dan Kokotajlo.
Yeah.
As you know, I love Apostasy, and when I was at British Council, you and I were chatting about festival strategies and things for it. I just think it's such a special voice, and why did you want to work with Dan, and what were the challenges of that film? I imagine it was budget was one challenge.
Well, you think, but actually not really. And it was very low budget, but Dan is really special talent, and as I'm sure you know, he himself was brought up as a Jehovah's Witness, and the film is about the experience of a family who are Jehovah's Witnesses. So it's not autobiographical in a sort of literal sense, because that story is about a mother and two daughters. But there's a huge amount of Dan's own story in that, and I loved it because it's a social drama, and it is about family and very universal questions, but at the same time it's an insight into a mindset that you just don't have access to. And, we've opened doors perhaps, but the idea of what it does to your attitude to God versus family and priorities, and if you live your entire life thinking that you're going to go to the better place, and that the most important thing is to protect your family in the eternity, and even if it comes at great sacrifice to your sort of here and now on earth, it's an extraordinary position to take. And when we were on the floor with that, we had Siobhan Finneran playing the mother, who's amazing actress.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so obviously she's done a lot and very experienced, and occasionally she'd say, as all good actors do, I don't think, would I do this, or why would my my character behave in this particular moment? And Dan would always say, well, because you're a witness, and he'd explain something which to her felt very unintuitive, and to her great credit, she'd always kind of go, okay, let's do that. And he was absolutely right. And I think she sort of absolutely saw that in the final product. But I thought the confidence of that as a first timer, and all of us on the floor were aware that it had a very different dynamic to normal, because he had access to this psychological insight and mindset that none of us did. So it was a really special, and he's a lovely guy as well. So it was a very special one to do. Yeah. So and budget wise, it was really low budget, and but it's a very contained piece.
I was going to say it's very contained and it's very intimate and
it's contemporary and it's very austere and in a good way, I hope. So actually, we had a brilliant team, and we shot all in Manchester, and the team up there were very much people that have worked on television and used to the speed of that, and so we it's funny, there was a bit of a pressure to get some sort of indie movie fancy inverted commas crew on it, and we were like, no, we want to get people that know this world and live there, and they were so talented and brilliant, but we just got we did it. So I think it felt like we had what we needed, so actually I don't know, my brain still can't quite work out why they all end up in the same place, whether you're on Suite Francaise, which has got $20 million, and you're or Apostasy, which has got less than $1 million, and you're on Suite Francaise, we still ended up around my kitchen table with the director, and I'm going, oh, my mum's German, she can do the subtitles for the Germans when they arrive in the, like I can ask her to just do some translation for me. And I just think, how have we ended up here again? Like when I'm roping in family members,
roping in favors always. That's what part of the producer's job.
They're all the same, so they all seem to end up kind of straining, and you haven't quite got enough. You just expand to fit the space allowed. It's just hilarious how it doesn't make that much difference.
Yeah. And what about with St. Maud? Obviously been amazing to see the response to this film, debut feature by Rose Glass, very striking storytelling. I mean, how did you even know about Rose? How did you first hook up with her, and how did you know this was going to be a great project you wanted to do?
Well, it was in development. It was an early development already when I read it. It was at Film 4, and there was a new producer who had been working with her, who'd been in development at QWERTY, so that was the connection. And we sort of, I don't know, we took it through quite a lot more development, but it was already, you could in conjunction with her previous work and the shorts, you could see it was something special. So it was something I immediately responded to, and she's a great writer, but had this very, very sophisticated sort of visual, you could see the sort of visual ideas that she wanted to bring through to it. So it was very much an ambitious, you could do it for a contained budget, and it wasn't kind of crazy ambitious, but it still had an ambition to be a sort of capital F film, like it was going to need a palette and a creating a world, not even though it's contemporary, it's not just reflecting something we could go out and find. And there's been a bit of a move of it recently. I think a lot of new filmmakers are starting to kind of explore ideas in genre. So it was a really sort of one of those films that just felt kind of blessed going through. We had everyone was on the same page during development. I think most of the work we did the later phases was all about just pulling out these tonal beats, and for those that haven't seen St. Maud, it sort of leans into horror, but it's very psychological, and so there's a slow crank up to what is quite a big kind of Grand Guignol kind of finale, and it is very, it goes to a big place, so it can't come out of nowhere. So it was always a kind of sense of exactly how you feel these moments of surrealism or the horror starting to escalate. But and then the cut, the shoot was really happy. very straightforward. Everyone was pals, and you know, we all shot and it was a month in a big house in Highgate, which was up the road for me. It was very civilized.
Oh, that's nice.
Then a week just before Christmas. Yeah, it was, oh my God, it was great. You know, literally go and pedal up the hill and then shoot in the house, come back home, you know, 8 to 7 every day. You know, it was honestly, it was the most sort of life. And then we had a lovely week in Scarborough up on the beach. And then we did go back and do pickups and things after, but it was, you know, but it was just one of those ones. And you know, we got on the edit and everyone was really into it and everyone gave the same notes and was excited. And then, you know, we had this amazing launch at Toronto at Midnight Madness and got these amazing reviews. And we're like, wow, it's as easy, you know, this is the kind of the blessed one. And then the pandemic happened. So suddenly we're like, and you know, I've still got a poster in my office with the A24 one, which is in cinemas, April 2020.
Right. Yeah, what did you released it online in some places?
Yeah, I mean, we had a great release here and with Studio Canal, and it was supposed to be May, and then it ended up being sort of October. And you know, I'm really glad we did it, because we did just hit a window where things were a bit easier, and we went, you know, obviously it came off quicker than we hoped, just because we went back into lockdown. And but it did do really well. I mean, for briefly we were #1 in the UK box office.
But we're speaking to you in February 2021. You're working from home mostly. I mean, I know Essex Serpent will be out and about a bit.
Yeah.
But normally I love that you in non-pandemic times share an office. Because you are sort of a lone wolf as a producer who can work with lots of different people and different companies as needed and collaborate. But tell us who you share your office with and why.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, you know, I very much like being, you know, I'm definitely a sort of free spirit. I like working with other producers and working with other partnerships, but I do like not having massive overheads and being able to sort of tailor projects. So, you know, and I work on a real mix, you know, projects for me in all different ways. I mean, like, you know, I jumped in, I you know, I normally jump in at some development point. I don't think I've ever done something where there's not been opportunity to kind of shape it in some way. But, you know, sometimes I generate projects, sometimes, you know, I'm on board from the kind of blank page stage or not. But yeah, but I've got this setup in, I share an office with 16 Films with Ken Loach's company, and we've got an office upstairs that I share with Ivana McKinnon and Camilla Bray. So, you know, we're all producers. You know, we call it the cupboard, which is probably a little bit sort of doing it down, but it's, you know, it's a small office. But I think we've produced about half of the British independent films of the last few years out of our cupboard.
Amazing. So, and yeah, and what do you, I mean, producing can be lonely. Why do you like being in a room with them sometimes?
Oh, it's just great. I mean, you know, we don't have a formal company together, although we are talking about developing one bigger project that we would actually produce together which would be the first. But wow, it's just a you know, a sort of sounding board at every level, you know, camaraderie, you know, psychological, you know, sort of, you know, who's the new person to send a script to it, you know, whatever company, you know, sort of. So you know, every sense, it's a kind of just a brilliant resource. And you know, it is a lonely job, because you know, a lot of the time when you're producing, if you have got concerns about stuff, you can't share it, because you're the one that's supposed to be the kind of above the water duck, you know, and you have to show confidence in all of your team and what you're doing. And you know, like everybody, you know, there's always moments you think, oh my God, you know, and so to not have another producer that you can really sort of talk at that sort of honest level with, you know, it's I like working with other people, you know. And someone once said to me, it's funny, as a producer, you never quite have the champagne moment, because like, you know, there's you know, like you're always so stressed when you have your first screening at a festival but it never quite feels like the hooray that, and that's not quite the end as well, because you're normally still doing deals on it and it hasn't been out theatrically, and so it's not the end, and so there's sort of never an end. There's never quite the moment where you'll just go, yeah, you know. So just having other people that make you do that is so brilliant. And I
love the three of you in your cupboard. I think it's great.
So good. Yeah. We redecorated just before lockdown, the first lockdown. And I had to do a mercy mission to rescue all the plants that were otherwise going to have a sad death in our new renovated cupboard. But yeah.
Well, I wish you luck getting back there after lockdown.
Thank you. Yeah.
A few sort of quick questions, maybe more fun, that I like to ask at the end. What are your pet peeves on set?
Oh, yeah, gosh, I don't have a very snappy answer to that. I mean, it's yeah, and some are probably not repeatable either. Kind of, you know, bad actor behavior peeves, but I can't go there. But,
you don't have to. If you don't have one that's jumping to mind, it's okay.
No,
just be well behaved and polite, people.
Yes, exactly. Everyone should be nice. There's no I am not a fan of the kind of the finger of blame school of producing. You know, I just cannot be dealing with that. You know, there's a lot of actually, that maybe is my pet peeve, you know. And I certainly grew up on productions where if something went wrong, huge amounts of energy would be expounded into kind of working out who had done it and why. And like, you know, it's just like, you know, unless you solve these things, I just can't be bothered.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
Sort it out. That's my mantra.
Can you think of a best day on set ever?
Oh, there's a few. I mean, it's always when things are just sort of magic, and you know, there's days when there's, you know, I mean, actors are extraordinary, and it's you know, I couldn't do what they do, and you know, you do suddenly you see the magic come, and it can be a tiny moment, or it can be a sort of moment of spectacle. I did have a hilarious moment when my birthday on Suite Francaise, which was the day that the German army rolled into the town in France. So we had the entire sort of Wehrmacht kind of rolling in and threatening to sing happy birthday to me. So it's sort of, yeah, I don't know if that's a brilliant moment or it's just the weirdest moment I've ever had in my life.
That's memorable.
Yeah, yes. But yeah, and again, I mean, this is going back years, but I did a show for US television years ago, which was about gladiators. And we were in a coliseum in Tunisia, which we'd taken over, and we had hundreds of extras, and we had the stunt team out of Gladiator, and we had 2 actual tigers and a lion, and you know, and I was sat at the back of a bunch of the SAs watching, and we were shooting down on some of the gladiators fighting, and everyone is literally, you can suddenly feel the bloodlust kind of come up, and everyone is shouting for these guys to kill each other, and you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, and you know, they would have actually, that's what they would have been doing in Roman times. And yeah, and I as someone who studied archaeology, and I wasn't a classicist, but to suddenly find myself in a Roman amphitheatre, completely in the moment, watching lions and tigers and gladiators fighting very realistically, and thinking, you know, we're all shouting, go. I'm thinking, wow, this is a sort of extraordinary privilege to kind of, you know, be utterly transported. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, we don't get enough lions and tigers in low budget British films. Maybe you can work on that.
That's what I need. Yeah, I do like all that stuff.
Yeah. And my final question is, what do you think that people misunderstand about the producer's job, or what a producer is and does?
Oh my God. I mean, what do they understand? I mean, like, there is nothing. I mean, my family don't know what I do. You know, I'm no one. And partly the problem is that producers do so many, you know, there's so many different flavors of us, you know. So, you know, you can be a producer and never set foot on a set, and you can be a producer that is kind of practically directing, you know, like it's there is no, I don't know what I do half the time. I mean, you somehow do it, but you're a bit of everything. And that's what I love about it. That is, that, you know, for people who have a need to be constantly entertained, which is probably exactly what I am. And like, you know, I love the fact that I can be in a Roman arena one day, and a, you know, 1940 French town another day, and now in 1893 Essex, and you know, it's brilliant. So, but yeah, no one has the faintest clue what I do.
That's the magic of it, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for telling us a little bit behind the curtain of what you've done as a producer and made some amazing work. Can't wait to see what's coming up next. Good luck getting back into that office after lockdown, and best of luck with the Essex Serpent.
Yes, thank you very much.